Good evening, everyone. Okay, I'm gonna try that one more time. Good evening, everyone. That's more like it. See, I'm going to be feeding off of your energy. So that's why I did that a second time, because that wasn't gonna work. I know we're all tired. And I appreciate the fact that you came out. So thank you for showing up. And welcome to all of you. So tonight we're doing things a little differently. We're gonna be having a panel discussion, just to kind of do some recap on what we've been focusing on at the beginning of the week. So I'm going to ask our panelists or our participants to join me here on the stage. The first person I'm going to ask to come on up and join me is Mrs. Susan Edwards. Give her a round of applause, everybody. Show support. Yay, Susan. Mr. Brandon Cheddar. Give him a round of applause. Mr. Andrew Loiten. Mr. Stephan Tony. So to our lovely panelists, I appreciate you. I thank you so much for agreeing to participate in this discussion. And they have no idea what the questions are going to be like or what we're going to be covering, because I wanted them to be as authentic as possible, nothing rehearsed, nothing prescribed. So they may be a little nervous because they don't know what they're in for, right? But isn't it best when it's coming from a place of authenticity, guys? Right? So they don't have time to plan and rehearse. So tonight, we are going to be focusing on fostering the desire to abstain from the world. So I'll say that again. Fostering the desire to abstain from the world. And we wanted it to be in line with our theme this week, which is abstaining from the world. So we felt like, since we've been talking to the teens or the youth about abstaining from the world, we wanted to have an open discussion about what it takes. Like, what do we all need for us to, be strong in our efforts to stay away from worldly things? So before I begin, I'm going to ask the youth that, and our online viewers, welcome to you. Thank you for joining in. If you have questions, the numbers on the screen, you can go ahead and text them in to 388-8780, and we will answer the questions for you as best as we possibly can. I'm also going to ask for our teens that you stay in tune with us. If I see you on your phone, I'm going to assume you're texting a question, and you guys know how I operate. If I see you on your phone and I don't see a question, I'm going to assume you have a Bible verse you'd like to share with us. Is that all right, guys? Is that all right? All right. Everybody, parents, we agree with that? If they're on their phones and we're not getting a question, I'm going to assume that you have a Bible verse you like to share, right? That's fair, right, guys? All right. So before we begin, we're just going to ask God to join us here as we have these discussions, and I'm going to ask you, our audience, to be supportive, be open-minded, be kind, and be gracious. So let's bow our heads for a word of prayer. Dear Father God, thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to come here to worship, fellowship, and be with you in your presence. We ask you that you will guide the topic discussion that we're about to have, dear Father God. Help us to speak from our hearts, but to do it all to your honor and glory. Lord, any anxieties that our participants may be experiencing right now, I ask you to take it away and help them to focus solely on you, and know that you are here to support them through the process. In your name I pray, amen. All right, so again, the participants are asking to turn the lights down. It's affecting their sight. So again, the topic is fostering the desire to abstain from the world. All right, so as you hear that topic, Miss Susan, what comes to mind for you? One word that comes to mind. Oh, you have a mic.
Okay, what comes to mind?
So one word that comes to mind.
Total surrender to God.
Total surrender. Even though I said one word, but she felt like she wanted to make that one word more effective with two more, yeah? Or three more? Okay, what about you, Brendan? When you hear this topic, fostering the desire to abstain from the world, what's one word that pops into your mind? What comes to mind? So this question applies to all of you. Okay.
Awareness.
Awareness, Mr. Loiten. Could you say that again one more time?
Love.
Love, okay.
Struggle.
Struggle. Okay, so we have surrender, awareness, love, and struggle. Do we have anything in the audience? Any other words come to mind when you guys hear that topic? No? Self-denial. That is a deep one. Yes. Set apart. Anybody else? Any other words come to mind? Faith. Okay. All right. So I have some questions for you guys, and I'm going to ask you to answer them. And for those of you with questions, again, please feel free to text them in, and we will try to address them as best as we can. But I wanted to start out with this Bible verse as well. It says, and it's from John 12, verse 9. I'm reading the English Standard Version. Whoever loves discipline loves knowledge, but he who hates reproof is stupid. So I repeat that again. Whoever loves discipline loves knowledge, but he who hates reproof is stupid. Then I'll go to Luke 1, verse 37. It says, all things are lawful, but not all things are helpful. Does everyone agree with that statement? All things are lawful, but not all things are helpful. All things are lawful, but not all things build up. So my first question is, what is the role of a Christian parent in trying to prepare their youth to abstain from the world? What role should a parent play? And I'm going to start out with a youth, because you are a parent, Mr. Loiten, you're a parent, Susan. So I'm going to start out with the youth. What role should a parent play, Stephan?
I think a parent should just be doing their best to, one, have the best relationship they can with their child, and two, trying to plant seeds of having a good Christian faith and following God with their child, because I don't think a parent can ever control their child. You can only do so much and just do everything that you can do and hope everything turns out okay. So, yeah.
Okay, Mr. Cheddar?
He said everything I was going to say. But basically, I feel like a parent should give you all the tools you need to go out in this life, you know. You're going to learn things along the way, but you want to be able to talk to them. I think that's the biggest thing, have that relationship with your parent.
Okay, so he's saying relationship is crucial when you are trying to prepare your youth to go out into the world. Do you guys agree? Youth in the audience, Christina Mackay, do you guys agree? Any objections? Larissa, do you guys agree that it's up to the parents to prepare you to abstain from the world? Okay, all right. So we'd like to hear from you, Miss Susan. Give us your take on that.
Okay, as a parent, it is our responsibility to make sure that we nurture our children. We have to lead by example. We must lead by example as much as we can. We're not perfect, but we have to try our best to lead by example. And as Stephan said, there's so much we can do. We can lay out everything. We can guide. We can sit. We can listen. And we have to be open to listening to our kids. We have to. If we are not, they're not going to succeed. They're going to be lost. So we have to be open to listening to them, even to the things that you don't want to hear. You know, you have to sit sometimes, the things that they're telling you, you have to just sit and say, oh my God, you know, and squeeze yourself and be open to listen to them. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Mr. Loiten.
I think about a text in the Bible that says, unless the Lord builds the house or the home, he labors in vain that builds it. And I think that as a parent, trying to steer our children in a godly way, we should make our home environment the best that we can to nurture the children, to lead them in a godly example, as Susie said, and to try to know our children. I mean, it sounds funny, but sometimes we don't know our children because we fail to grow with our children. They change. You know, I remember my children were toddlers at one point. They were teenagers, and now they are young adults in college. And I had to get to know them in these different phases of their lives and to build that relationship. I remember one time my son confronted me and said, Daddy, you're treating me like a child. And he was an adult. And I had to confront that because I had to change the way in which I had dressed him now as an adult as opposed to when he was a child. And so I think that, you know, the best way to lead our children, as Susie says, by example, but to get to know our children and to keep that relationship, as Stephan said, with our children as they grow.
Thank you for that.
I just want to add something else too. And every kid is different.
Can you hold the mic up?
Every kid is different. It's not one size fits all. Every kid is different. So what may be good for this kid may not be necessarily good for another kid. So that's why you have to get to know each kid. You have to get to know them so that you are able to tune into who they are, what they're all about. You can't use the same technique that you use on, like if I have Karina, I can't use the same technique I have on Dina or Serena or even Kayla, right? So I observe, I sit and I observe. By observation, I watch and I see how this one moves, how they communicate, how they act, and that's how you get to know them, even on the outside. You can't actually go inside their homes, but from the outside, seeing how they move at church, what they do, you can observe certain things that you can make yourself approachable to them, or they can also approach you. And you have to be humble. There's nothing wrong as adults to be humble before your kids. There's nothing wrong to say, I am sorry if you do something wrong. You know, it works both ways.
Okay. So I'm going to throw this out there. I'm going to make this statement. And this is for you, youth, right? So sometimes the statement is made that an adult shouldn't have to go through all that. They're the adults. If they tell you to do something or they are trying to provide guidance, then you should just listen and respect the fact that they're older than you, they're more experienced. Do you guys agree with that? So you do agree with it, because I didn't hear you. I'm hearing no. Okay. I'm going to ask someone to grab a mic for me, because I'd like to hear from a couple of you. But until then, I'm going to bookmark that. Brandon, you want to take that? Because that sounds like a lot of work. What Miss Susan was just talking about, that's a lot of work. I mean, if youth are coming to church, they're not my kids. That's their parents' job. That's not what a lot of people say. It should start from home. That's their parents' job. Why am I having to take time to go get to watch Serena, watch Kayla, watch Dina? If I tell you to do something, you're in church, and I tell you to stop, stop. I'm the adult. So I want to hear from you first, Brandon, and then I want to hear some feedback in the audience.
Okay. For me, back when I was a little bit younger, I think I had a hard time kind of just wondering why my parents were telling me to do certain things. And I think now, today, I understand half of it. I understand that they want what's best for me. I understand that they are looking out for me in every possible way. But I think it comes back to knowing your kids, just knowing how they grow up and what their interests are, everything about them. So I'm kind of half.
I'm going to shift it a little bit. So my question is, when they are in church or they attend church, why should church members take on that responsibility to get to know other people's children? Like, why? Again, if they're here and an adult tells them to do something, why can't they just follow through? Because if your parents doing what they should be doing at home, then you should be respectful enough to follow what I tell you. Do you agree with that statement?
Partly.
Partly. Talk to me.
I guess it just depends on the situation. For
Okay.
me, I would have to have like a little situation to give you a good answer on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Mr. Tony, you have anything you'd like to add, sir?
In regards to what you said, I think the reason why adults should get to know people's kids in the church is because when, let's say, an adult comes to me and tells me to do something and have no relationship to you except for maybe you know my parents, I feel as though like you don't know me well enough to even be speaking on whatever I'm doing right now. If that makes sense. Whereas like the reasons why I respect my parents is because they've taken the time and invested in me and shown that they've cared for me. But to automatically give that sort of respect to anyone who walks and says something to me, especially like if I'm not even in the best mood that day and like I can tell they might not even be, it's very hard for me to just say, yes, I'll just listen to whatever they're doing.
But why not? Why can't you just respect that that person's an adult?
Personally speaking, saying someone's an adult doesn't mean anything to me. So I don't know if, because I feel like it's more of a respect thing, more so than like an age gap, because personally, we all know adults who don't act like adults. So I don't know if just because you have 10 years on me means that like you're gonna come yell at me in the fellowship hall. So I don't know. Like,
All right. I can see your fellow peers agree.
well, no, but I also want to say a lot of times there are situations, especially when it's like all of us are being loud or something might be dangerous or there's something urgent that needs to happen, where it is really important to just like listen to an authority figure and just like listen at that point. But I feel as though in most situations, I think it's important to like come to that child out of respect, out more so than out of like emotion or anger or anything like that. So
Okay, thanks for that. And you said respect, so you're trying to tell me that youth should be respected?
yes, and youth should be respectful as well. So
All right, I can take that. We can take that, right, grown-ups? We can take that, right? So I want to hear from you guys in the audience in response to my statement. So basically what I was saying is, why can't you just listen to what the adults say? Why do they have to do all that work to try to get to know you and observe you? That's too much work. They're not your parents. Why can't you just honor that they're an adult and they know what's best for you? So I see hands all over the place. Everyone wants to say something. So I see Nick. He was first. But I'm going to let a youth go first, Nick.
I just want to say, if you see a youth doing something wrong, if you are then going to make the decision to go and address them, then like just like how you're saying it's too much work to get to know them, I'm not your parent, then it's too much work to go correct them, not your parent. Because you have to decide, okay, you either care or you don't care. So if you don't want to get to know them, then you're not really in a position to correct them.
Okay. So she's saying, if you're saying it's too much work to get to know them, then it should be too much work for you to be trying to parent them the same way. Is that what you're saying? Okay, and then really it doesn't validate your effort to correct them, because if you don't value the relationship or trying to build it, then what's the point? Okay.
So my question is, when you first asked the question to Brendan, he spoke about, there was a period in time when he had a hard time listening to what his parents had to say. And then one day, he did kind of half of what they have to say, start understanding. What was it that changed in you, or maybe how your parents communicated? Because I get the sense, and that was me, I was that kid that didn't listen to anything my mother had to say. What is it that shifts one day when you realize, or what caused you to realize maybe they do know something about half of the things they've spoken about?
I think for me, it's experience. It's their experiences that they share with me. I think I'm very biased, but I really love my parents. I feel like they're the best parents
Well, we would hope
in
so.
the world. Like, really though, because they kind of listen. They listen to me, and we can have conversations whenever. I knew years ago that wasn't the case, but I think right now is the best time for me. Like, I could understand why they're doing certain things. I don't necessarily agree with it all the time, but I have a better understanding with them just because I grew that relationship.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not yet. Can we bookmark that? Because I want to jump into something else, right?
Nikki, sorry, before you do, they still want to make a comment on your first question.
Oh, so we gotta go to the
yeah,
youth,
we gotta
Mr.
go.
Nick. We gotta go to
So
the
I have
youth.
2.
Okay.
I just wanted to add on to what Dina said, concerning normally how it goes is say for example, if somebody doesn't know you like that, especially when it comes to church, there is a healthy type of respect that, with, well-trained children that they give to adults even when, they don't know that specific adult. But at the same time, it's if you don't know me and then you come off to me a certain way, the natural response is for some people is to be defensive and be okay, who are you? I don't know you.
Okay.
Don't come and talk to me like that.
Okay.
You're not my adult parent.
All right. Thank you. Next comment, and then we'll move on.
My point of view is more from experience. Oh, my point of view is experience-wise, because I don't know if any Pathfinders remember that one lady that was talking to us, and she was mind you, this woman has never spoken to us in a group setting ever, and she's oh, Pathfinders don't correct Pathfinders. Mind you, I don't know this woman's name. I've never spoken to this woman ever. And she's repeat to me again, repeat it to everyone. I'm bro, I'm what's this woman's name? And it was just she was demanding respect. And I'm I don't know you. You're not a real, let me not say she's not a real Pathfinder, because she was, but you're not someone of authority here. Maybe if it was Mr. Andrew or Mr. Navin, I'm all right, but I don't know this woman.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is a recurring theme of the need for respect, the need for us to be mindful of our approaches, right? And I'm hearing relationship. I'm going to move forward, though, because I want to go on to the next question I have. And thank you guys for that. What are your expectations of adults? So this goes to the youth. What do you expect from the adults of the church? What are your expectations? Mr. Tony, Mr. Cheddar? So you're youth, and this goes to you guys. You're youth, you're here, you're part of the church. What are your expectations? Alex?
Okay, so personally, if you're a person of the church and you would like to be involved with the youth, you would have to understand that youth, like, we're currently growing into like our own skin, and we're learning about how we want to be treated and how we're supposed to be treating like other people. So a lot of, not gonna say, let me rephrase, a lot of older people, not mature adults, got you, mature adults don't necessarily want to be involved with the youth, but like to speak on the youth, if that makes sense? Like, they like to say things about us, but they don't know anything about us. So
Okay.
if you were to, like, you know, want to be in contact with youth, you would have to understand that we want to be treated with some type of respect, and that, like, in order to get the same respect back, like, you would have to give off the I care vibes.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So they do need to show that they care, is what I'm hearing. They do need to be intentional about being involved with you guys, is what I'm hearing. Okay. Anybody else? Larissa?
When, like, you come into contact with youth, or you're just trying to talk to us or anything, please don't come with any preconceived notions that you might have heard from other people in the church, because the people who are telling quote-unquote rumors or spreading things about the youth, they might not even know us. Again, that brings us back to relationships with the youth. And some adults come up to you like already thinking, okay, they're a bad kid, like, I'm gonna tell them this, and, you know, like, come up to us with a clean slate, because you don't know us.
Okay. All right. I get that. Stephan?
This has been feeling very aggressive, but I think respect is a serious word for me. I think the most important thing that I feel like adults should have with dealing with the youth is just being, like, kind and nice to them, if that makes sense. Because I feel like what they're saying is true, where it's like a lot of adults and older people have these bias against youth or preconceived notions, and it's very apparent when they talk to us as a whole or talk to us as individually. And I think it's obvious I'm not gonna have a relationship with all 500 plus adults in this church, but more so that, like, when we do interact or when we do talk to adults, it's just a pleasant interaction, and I feel like that's just the most important thing, to leave a pleasant impact on people's lives, even if it's just a 5-minute conversation. So
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So again, the question was, what are your expectations of adults? Let me just add on one more thing to that. So if adults are trying to encourage you to stay away from things of the world, what do they need to do? And what I'm hearing is relationships, respect, kindness, right? Getting to know you. So Karina, and then we'll move on to the next question.
Okay, I was just gonna say, to add on to what everybody was talking about, that I know, like, it's like common to think that when you're older, you're wiser, and I don't necessarily like agree with that. I don't want it to sound so like bad, but like Miss Susan was saying, you can't. I'm just saying, you can't. There's not a one size fits all, and sometimes adults think that, oh, I'm older and oh, I'm wiser, so I know what I'm talking about.
Okay.
And it's like sometimes what you're trying to talk to me about is something that you have not gone through, but it could also be the other way around, where sometimes adults can like deflect what they've been through onto another person. In this case, being a youth, and sometimes it can be rough because sometimes and it's just normal. It could be adults, children, whatever. Sometimes when you're going through something, people can and have a tendency to push it onto other people sometimes, and they'll deflect it onto you. So I think as adults as adults in the church, you just have to be careful of, like we were saying, how you come across, and don't think that you know it all, because like Stephan was saying, just because you have 10, 20, 30 years on me, that doesn't mean that you know what you're talking about.
Thank you, Karina. All right, so next point I wanted to make is, so I hear you guys, I hear you youth, and then what I want to say is statements have been made that you guys make it difficult for the adults to connect with you. Because grown-ups do try to connect with you, but you guys aren't very kind. You're not open. So it seems very difficult for grown-ups to connect with you. Do you agree with that, Mr. Loiten? I see you guys, and I'm coming to you, but I want to hear from Mr. Loiten.
Well, my experience is that the youth of this church, they're very kind, gracious. I've had some very good interactions with them. I've known some of them personally. My friend here, Stephan, I remember 2 years ago, he was my prayer partner. Just before I went to the men's retreat at this time of the year, we split into groups and we were praying together by phone. It was, the third person was Kevin, right? We had a good time. And I remember him praying for my wife, who was expecting Caleb at the time. And his prayers were answered. So I thank him for that. So in saying that, I have some very positive relationships with the youth of this church, and I have nothing else.
So you can't really relate to that statement because of
No.
your positive experience?
Yeah, my positive experience. Yeah.
So what do you recommend as an adult then to other adults who are making the statement that is so hard sometimes? What do you recommend? What worked for you?
Well, getting to know these young people could make a big difference. You know, as I said, I got to know Stephan, you know, personally. Even before that, I knew him from the Bible Bowl, just, you know, in studying Bible with him. But 2 years ago, I really started to talk and relate, and we'd often have conversations. And I would even tell him what was going on in my life, and he would pray for me. So I think even though we're adults, we still need our young people. And they have faith that we can, you know, glean from. So,
thank you. Appreciate it. All right, so I'm going to take one question from a youth in the audience. Whoever was first. Our time's limited, so I'm going to go with the first two, and then we're going to move on.
Okay, but basically, like, if an adult approaches me wrong, don't, like, if you come at me and you start yelling at me or giving me attitude, and then you want to be all buddy-buddy with me later, don't expect me to want to be all nice to you if you approach me incorrectly. I'm not saying you have to know me, but, like, okay, if I'm doing something wrong, you could just kindly come to me and be like, oh, hey, if you don't even know my name, you call me whatever, but you can approach me in a certain way that I would want to communicate to you. Don't just come at me the wrong way and later on want to be buddy-buddy with me. Like, that's not how it works.
Okay, thank you. Serena, and then I'm moving on.
A lot of us have also been scarred from first relationships with adults. So we may come off a little have our guard up because we don't want to be scarred again from another adult who doesn't understand us.
Great point. And I want to make this statement. I want to make sure as adults and as youth that we hear me out for a second. Children, youth, they're not adults. They may act like they're adults, but they're not adults. Their brains are still developing. Most up until they're 25, some people till they're 50. I'm just saying, right? However, what do I mean? Why am I saying this? Because children, youth, use their behaviors to communicate. I'm going to say that again. Children, youth, use their behaviors to communicate. So if they are angry or frustrated, most of them may not say to you, I am frustrated, or I am angry, or I am sad, or I am lonely. They may lash out, right? They may isolate. They may come off a little harsh. That's their way of saying. So this is why it's important that as adults, and this goes both ways too. youth, grown-ups also have challenges. We have problems. We're not perfect. We have things going on in our lives that stresses us out. And sometimes grown-ups have a history where they were also scarred, right? Because I don't want you guys to think that it's just you. We get it. Some of us remember we were youth. We remember we were kids. Some of us are still struggling. I'm not excusing the behaviors, but what I'm saying to you is what's important is that we apply curiosity at all times, because curiosity and judgment cannot reign in the same space. So if adults are approaching you and they're curious, hey, Serena, I noticed that you wore shorts to church today. What's going on? Is everything okay? Maybe it's, I didn't get to wash. Maybe it's, you know what? The house burned down last night and this is all I could find. And I'm speaking, this has happened. This is something I've experienced in the past. Instead of she's just trying to be defiant, coming to church dressing like that. What is she thinking? Or maybe the adult comes at you a certain kind of way. You know what? Maybe they had a rough week. When you're curious and you approach situations with curiosity, you're wanting to know, you're investigating. If you're investigating, you can't make. Say that again. If you're investigating, you can't make. And assumptions are also, say it really loud, assumptions are judgment. So I just want to make sure that I point that out. If you are investigating, you're being curious. And if you're being curious, you can't make assumptions, because assumptions are judgments. So I just wanted to make sure I point that out. I have a question that was texted in. When do you think it's appropriate to force your child to do things? This was sent in from one of our online viewers. When is it appropriate to force your child to do things? And when do you believe that it's best to respect their wishes? I'm going to give that to you, Miss Susan.
Force. You cannot do that. You cannot force them. So it goes.
Can you hold the mic a little higher
it
first,
goes
please?
back again to the relationship that it starts from the home again and how you bring your child up. So I'm not sure at what age the person is saying to force them to do things.
So if I have a teenager, I have a 14-year-old that's saying, I don't want to go to church. I'm not going to church. What do you do? Do I force that child?
No, you can't.
Well, what do you do? Because you're the parent.
Them. You cannot force them. You cannot force them. You know, all you can do is counsel with them. You cannot force them. You have to sit and talk with them as to the reason why. It's a long process. It's a process that's going to take a lot out of you to find out, why don't you want to go to church? You know, if you have instilled certain things, you have been doing the best that you can as a parent to grow your kid and to raise them in a certain way. And at the age of 14, 15, say, hey, you know, I'm not interested in going to church anymore. Then you have a discussion. After you have the discussion, you leave it alone. There's so much you can do.
Okay, thank you for that. Mr. Loiten. Well, hang on. Whitney, I'm gonna get you. Whitney, I saw her. Go ahead, Alaire.
Okay, so I feel like as a parent,
can you hold the mic a little higher, please?
If you're a parent, you can't force your child to do a certain thing because it might not be what they want to do. You can lead them onto something that you feel like they might like, but if they try it out and they experience it and they don't like it, and they come to you saying that, oh, I don't want to do this anymore, but you're still forcing them to continue on with it, that's not, it's just going to make them like it even less and less. If you force someone to do something, they're not going to want to do it, even if they want to. But if you keep forcing someone to do it, they're not going to. Personally, yeah, kind of.
Okay.
Personally.
All right.
Yeah, like I like to do something, and I was just continue forced to do it more and more and more. But when I continue to be forced to do it, I just lose passion for it, and I feel like it's something I not want to do anymore.
Okay, thank you for that, Whitney.
I appreciate everyone's input, Ms. Susan and Alaire. However, I do notice that recently this generation is becoming a little lax. And the reason why I say that is because a 14-year-old, just as you said, is still growing, is still learning, is not paying bills in my house. And therefore, if I can definitely sit you down and explain as to why it is, why don't you want to go to church? Perhaps the kid was hurt or whatever. Let's talk about it. However, as long as you're underneath this roof, you are going to continue to go to church and doing the right things, because I was 16 years old trying to get dressed, and my mom was like, "You're not going to church like that." "Yes, I am." "No, you're not." And she would place the outfit out, and I'm like, "I am 16 years old." And she's just looking at me like, "Okay, when you're ready with your little," and sure enough, as I got older, I didn't want to wear the tight clothes anymore. I didn't want to wear the little short skirts anymore because my mom was like, "No, you're not. No, you're not." And so we have to be careful not to lose that, where our 14-year-olds are telling us what they're going to do and what they're not going to do. Yes, you have a voice. Indeed, you have a voice. Let us reason together, but I'm still the parent.
All right. Okay, I want to hear from someone else who hasn't spoken, another youth. I'm trying to give everyone a chance. Brittany, I see you. And then we're going to move on. Another youth who hasn't spoken yet, who would like to address this. Mikey? Okay.
I do want to reinforce, I feel like it's very important to listen to the youth and listen to, because I don't know, I'm okay because I feel like not going to church or saying I don't want to go to church is different from saying I don't want to go to church anymore. I feel like it's more so like, I don't want to go to school today, not like a constant everyday struggle. I don't want to go to school anymore, to find out deeper to the reasons why. I'm okay with mental health breaks. Sometimes you just need a break. I'm okay with this. I don't want to go to church today. I don't want to go to school today. Okay, we'll take a day of rest. Super important to recharge, re-energize. But I definitely reinforce what Whitner says. There's some things you don't want to lose, And I feel like faith is very important. And I feel like continuing to have our children, especially in a home with Adventist parents and all that, continuing to go to church, continue to get that faith, because that's not for anybody else but you, So.
Okay, thank you. All right, so Stephan?
Really important is, like what you're saying is...
You hold it up.
I feel like forcing your kid to do things, I feel like if they're at a young age, I feel like obviously there's things they can't understand and you need to be that very strong authority figure and put your hand down on certain things, or your foot down, sorry. But I feel like as the kid gets older and they reach the teenage years, I think it becomes more of a give and take in what you're willing to give up on. If you decide that there are certain things you are going to be strict on no matter what, you live under my household, you are going to do these things, and the kid is still repeatedly, or the teen is still repeatedly saying, I don't want to do this, I feel like it comes to a point where the parent has to understand that there probably is going to be a rift in the relationship at that point. Because I feel like no matter what you do, no matter how hard you try, that child or that teen is still their own person and they're going to do whatever one they want to do. Because at 16, 2 years from now, they're leaving the house and there's nothing you can do about that if they want to, So I feel like it's important to be strong on certain things and have your foot down and say, you have to do this. But it's also important to understand that that kid, as a result of that, may pull back or may become more reclusive from you, and that probably might be an issue. So.
Thank you. Mr. Loiten, I'd like to hear from you before I move on.
Okay. Parenting is rough.
It is.
It's rough. I have a toddler here, and I also have a 23-year-old in law school. So I've experienced the gamut of kids growing up. And when they're in their formative years, guidance, I like to use the word guidance instead of force. guidance is extremely important. Try to get it in those first 7 years.
That's right.
But after they, I remember when my kids were about that age, I was seeing somebody who was parenting their teenager, and I was a little judgmental because the teenager was giving a hard time. I mean, and I was saying, man, can't you just control your teenager? Look at my children here in their former years.
Yeah, I don't have that problem.
Yeah, no, I don't have that problem. I teach them the scriptures, scriptures, and they'll listen to you. I didn't understand about teenage years until my children became teenagers. And, as I said, you have to grow and grow with the kids. Because if you start to force them as a teenager, I'm not saying that you're not the parent, but they're going to probably resent you. They're going to pull back, and you're telling them good stuff some of the times. But if you're not having a relationship with them and keeping just opening up to listening to them and reasoning with them, you can lose them.
Yes.
And so I would just say that, do everything you can in the first 7 years, but as they grow into teenage years, that forcing is not going to work. God doesn't lead by force. He leads by love. And we have to find ways to love our children into being obedient than forcing them, especially as they approach adulthood.
Say that again, Mr. Loiten. You have to find a way to love your children into being what?
Obedient.
Yes. And I so much agree with that because I do agree at some point as a parent, you do need to put your foot down and say, I hear what you're saying, and this is what we're going to do. I understand that. I get it. Like you said, it's not easy to parent, but that's why relationships are so important. And the other thing I want to note as parents is maybe your child is having a difficult time with communicating to you and listening to you on a certain issue. That's why community is important. That's why it's important to have connections. That's why it's important to have support. Because while your child may not listen to you, there may be another adult within the church that has a great rapport with that child will listen to. So I want to say that again. That's why connections and supports are so important, because while your child may not be open to hearing what you have to say, they may listen to another church member who they have a great rapport with. And I want to make sure that we understand that. There's no shame in my game. I will call people and have them, hey, can you talk to Dina? It's okay, because we're not perfect. Parenting is very difficult, and it can be from a lonely place, because sometimes we feel we're the only ones going through it. But when you have a supportive group of people around you who you know you can trust, who mean your child no harm and they're not judgmental, sometimes the rapport they have with your child is enough to get you guys past that hump. Mr. Nick?
This kind of goes back to the question I had that got cut
That
off.
I said no.
So I want to ask the young people, the theme is abstaining from the world, right? Do you believe your parents have a responsibility
That's my next question.
under God to teach you values or help you to abstain from the world? What I think I'm hearing is, hey, if I don't like it, I don't have to do it, and don't force me. Do you believe we as adults have any responsibility to say sometimes, I'm sorry, this is the only way it works? Or should it be, hey, you know what? We talked about it 3 times. You decided you don't like it. You're on your own. And that's why my question was, at what point in time, because you said half the time you didn't hear and you fought, but then one day you decided maybe half of what they say is okay. Do you guys believe we have a responsibility to correct you and bring you up knowing who Jesus is and what he expects?
I want to hear from somebody who hasn't spoken yet before I hear from the rest of you guys. Somebody who hasn't been as vocal, another youth. Anybody else? All right, Jaden, let's hear from you. Answering Nick's question.
So your question was like, should you brought up thinking about God and stuff like that, or like? Um, I feel like I don't want to make it. All right. So basically, you can't force me to do anything. You can strongly suggest for me to do something. You can threaten me into doing something. But my mother cannot physically take me out of my bed and make me go to school. She could be like, if you don't get out of this bed, I might bring the belt. I'll probably listen to her then. Or if she cusses at me and tells me, you better get up or you're not going to have a place to go when you come home, I'll be like, all right, I'll go to school now. But like,
But isn't that forcing you?
I could still be like, all right, okay. Like,
So you respond to bribes and threats.
not bribes. I've never been bribed to go to school.
Okay. All right, thank you for that. Let's hear from someone else. Come on, quickly, guys.
To respond to that, yes, I do feel like parents have a responsibility in training up their child. The Bible does say, train up your child in the way that they should go, and whatever happens, they won't depart from it. And I do feel like that is very important. However, I do feel like there's kind of a gray area in terms of like age. I can't tell you like, oh, at 14, that's when you stop forcing your child, or at 16, you stop. I can't tell you that. What I can tell you is, I do think with some parents there is a power issue in terms of I'm the parent, I pay the bills, I feed you, and yes, that's all great and nice. Thank you for that. That was your job in the first place. You chose to have a child, but no, I'm not trying to be fresh. But what I'm saying is that one of the only things that actually belongs to you when you're living in your parents' house, one of the very few things is your beliefs. It's your beliefs. It's your life choice. And yes, your parents can enforce things. Yes, my mom can bring me to church and bring me to church and bring me to church. But do you really want to be the parent that forces your child to go to church? You know that this is not necessarily what they don't believe in, but they don't want to go to church just for them to do what you know that they're going to do. They're going to leave. And it wasn't what they believed in. You can't force people you can't choose people's beliefs for them. Regardless of if you're a parent or not, yes, you can train them. Yes, I can show you this way, but I can't tell you this is what you have to do, because at the end of the day, when I leave my parents' house, I have to choose my beliefs. I have to choose my philosophy. I have to choose whatever I choose to believe.
All right, I hear you. Thank you, Miss Karina. All right, so was Alex? Okay.
Okay. To be quite frank, at the end of the day, your parents can get you to heaven.
Your parent can what?
Your parents can't get you to heaven. Your friends can't get you to heaven. Your grandparents
cannot
can
get you to heaven.
It's you. And for me, like, being forceful works for some things, but not all. When it comes to beliefs, your parents, it works like to plant seeds. Like, instead of like forcing it, like the belief on them, like plant seeds and then let them have their own personal experience, because it's, at the end of the day, it's their salvation. And whether you like it or not, parents, like, you can't save your child. Your child has to make that decision for themselves.
All right, thank you for that. I want to hear from Brandon.
At some point, you're gonna have to know what you believe in and why you believe it. I remember, like, even me being SDA, I always wondered as a kid why I was in this, religion. Mm-hmm. And when I learned why, I knew that I wanted to stay in this religion, and I knew that God was very important to me. It goes back to wanting to go to church. You know, like you got to understand why you go to church. You know, so eventually you're going to have to know.
So what you're saying is perhaps parents should be more intentional about educating their youth about the benefits of going to church, why they're going to church versus instilling and enforcing and saying you need to go to church. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
Stephan? I see you. Can Stephan answer first or? Oh, you want to reply? Okay.
So my question is, if at 13 you decided, I don't want to go to church, this religion thing, this SDA thing is not for me, and mom had said, okay, we've talked about it a few times, just don't go anymore, go do whatever else you want to do on Sabbath, you think that just completely cutting off church, even though she knows the more you're around, the more you hear, the more you grow, and she has an obligation by God to bring you up until one day you turn 18 and then you can go anywhere you want on whichever day you want. Don't parents have that obligation? And I know I'm speaking specifically about religion right now, and there's a lot of other issues, but that's what we're talking about, is
abstaining from the world.
So
right.
I'm trying to narrow it back to that. Some of those principles and values that we're trying to give, we are responsible at some point in time to God as to whether we taught you and did this for you.
Okay. Go ahead, Stephan. And then Mikey, I think I saw your hands, and then we'll move on.
I do agree with what you're saying, that parents are responsible, but I would never say that a parent is necessarily responsible for their child's salvation.
I didn't say that.
I know, I'm not saying that, but it's kind of what I feel like the pathway we're leading down. Because for me, it's like you can lead a horse to water, but you can't force it to drink. Or like, no matter how hard you try or whatever, that child is always going to end up making their own decisions. And of course, you have to, like, when they're younger, bring your child to church, teach them about God. But like you said, if at 13 your child decides, I don't want to go anymore, and you continuously force them to go throughout their teenage years up until they're 18 and they decide to leave, I feel like that's just a problem that might have been caused in their relationship. Because for me, obviously it depends on your kids. Some kids are way more mature at 13 than others. But I feel like it comes to a certain point where you have to realize that teenagers aren't the same age as like 9-year-olds, if that makes sense. Like, there's reasoning that goes behind a lot of these thoughts and these beliefs, and there's reasons why people just don't want to go to church. Most of the time, like what Ms. Brittany said, if someone says, I don't want to go to church anymore, it's usually not for the reason of, I just don't want to go to. Because if you did raise your child in the church, there's a lot of ties that like we have in the church. There's people we meet here, we have friends, we have family. So I feel like if that child is coming out of place to you of honesty and says, I don't want to do this, you have to like seriously talk to them and consider it and reason with them more so than just say, well, get your butt up, we're going on Saturday.
All right. Thank you. And that's a great point. So it goes back to what I said about being curious. If we're curious, then we'll learn. When we're curious, we can apply compassion and kindness and understanding. We're able to put ourselves in the other person's place. And so teens, I'm going to throw this out there for you guys. The same way you're wanting your parents to hear you out and get where you're coming from, it's also important for you to also put your place in your parents' position. Because God put us in place to guide you, teach you, model what's appropriate for you. Again, if your brains are developing, you're not always going to make decisions that are sound. Your brains are wired for fun. It's wired for risk. I'm not saying that I'm devaluing your intellect. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is sometimes we have to make that decision on your behalf because you're not always going to make the decision that's best for you. If I investigate and find out that there's some underlying reason why you're not wanting to go to church, then we can work around it. But if you're straight out saying, I don't want to go, then that's not going to work. I'm going to move on, guys, because of the time. I have a question that was sent in from an online viewer that says, do you believe that physically disciplining children is the best course of action? If you could raise your children again, would you do anything different? Okay. The amount of whoopings I got, It didn't make a difference. It really didn't make a difference. Some of them were traumatic, and I understand my family did what they needed to do because at the time that's the information they had. If you're hitting your children in anger, then it becomes abuse. I'm going to say that again. I'm not against spanking. I said it. I don't necessarily think you have to take that route. It goes back to relationships again. But that's your household, not mine. You do what works for you. But if you're hitting your children in anger, and I've done it before, and I regretted it, and I asked for forgiveness, and I apologize because I'm not perfect. But if you're hitting your children in anger, then it becomes abuse, period. If you have a relationship with that child, and you are using more love and influence than anything else, then at a certain point, there's no need for disciplining. I work with people, a lot of you know what I do for a living, who are in my office crying because they were traumatized, they were badly beaten and still have scars to show it. So we have to be very mindful. If you are hitting your child out of anger, then it becomes abuse. So I saw Mikey's hand. Are you responding to this question? Go for it.
What I personally think, parents shouldn't really punish their kids.
Hold the mic up for me, please.
Punish their kids by spanking them. One, it hurts, and two,
that's the point.
Two, some kids are like, oh no, if I do this again, I'm gonna get whooped again. But other people are like, no, I still want to find this out for myself. Some people want to make choices, and they don't care if they get spanked.
That was me.
So, yes, there is really no point to do it. And other times, it's because people do it for love. Sometimes they care for their children. No, they do. They care for their children. And they want to keep them away from the dangers of the world. That's why some parents punish their children.
Thank you. That was a good point. Very good point. Well said. All right. So I want to hear from this gentleman over here, Lisa, because I'm trying to hear from people who we haven't spoken to yet as we wind down. Are you responding to the question about spanking, sir?
Oh, yes, I am.
Okay.
I was gonna say that there are some parents out there who actually do spank their kids out of anger and actually do cause abuse. But there are some other parents who also spank their kids just to be able to control them, and it's also the wrong motive to spank their kids. When they're spanking their kids, they have to do it out of love and correction.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. All right. So the final question goes to Miss Susan here. What do you do when a child approaches? Okay, I'm trying to read the question here. What do you do when you are approached negatively by an adult, and when you ask them if they are okay, they take it as disrespect? And then they reprimand you because they misunderstand your questioning as disrespect. Because I did say that earlier. So the question is, I'm gonna paraphrase it a little bit. Yes. So the question basically is, because I think I said it earlier, that sometimes an adult may be going through something, having a difficult time, and they may snap at you as the youth. So this question is, well, what do you do if an adult does that and you say to them, hey, are you okay? The adult approaches you, the youth, disrespectfully, and you ask them if they're okay, and then they say, you're disrespecting me because they asked that person if they're okay.
How would I answer that?
What do you do? How do you handle that situation as a youth? So what would be your advice to that young person to address that? So you come at me, the youth, and you're disrespectful to me, and I say, well, are you okay? Because you coming at me some kind of way, and then you cuss me out and tell me I'm being disrespectful because I asked you if you're okay.
The youth is asking me.
Yeah, so the youth is saying, how do you handle that?
Well, what I would do is I would sit with that youth. You have to take the time.
No, the youth is asking
youth is
you,
asking me.
how do they address that adult who just cursed them out and tell them they're being disrespectful for asking you if you're okay?
You cannot, under any circumstance, be rude to that adult. None at all. It's better for you to stay quiet, and then you take it to someone else. And that person, if it's your parent, then that you can go along with that person to the person, with your parent to the person, so that they can address it as to what happened.
Okay. Brandon, do you agree with that?
Yeah. My advice is just walk away.
Walk away.
Yeah.
So you're saying go get the counsel of your parent. Do not retaliate with disrespect. You're saying walk away.
You know, when the young person is asking if the adult is okay, it shouldn't be with an attitude, because that okay could mean, are you in the right mind, or are you okay, you know? Or, you know, and the adult could take it that way. So just as Susan said, you know, just be respectful. You may want to, go for your parents and just get them to go to that adult with you to clarify any misunderstandings. But just be respectful.
Thank you. And Mr. Tony ends it by saying?
Yeah, I agree with Brandon. Just walk away. I don't know why you're trying to reason with someone who's like angry and emotional. It's just give them time. Just move on. It's probably not even personal. They're having a bad week. Just move on.
And you say walk away, they're probably having a bad week. So I appreciate your participation in the discussion. Our time was very limited, so we weren't able to get all the questions. And again, like I said in the beginning, curiosity and judgment cannot reign in the same space. So if we spend more time asking questions, being curious, investigating as to the reason for the behaviors we're seeing, then it eliminates judgment, it fuels compassion, it fuels kindness. And when we do that, it also fuels empathy for the other person. I want to make sure that I'm going to wrap up by saying this. The difference can make or break a relationship with approaches. Judgment is based on past experiences. Judgment does not involve being present. Curiosity kills judgment. Curiosity begins with trust, and trust, it requires you to be trustworthy. It eliminates any assumptions from the other person. And judgment, while it shuts down innovation, it breaks heart, ruins relationships. Curiosity shows the other person that you trust them, you respect them, and you want to learn more about them. I appreciate the time you guys took to come out tonight to fellowship with us. I want to thank our panelists. Give them a round of applause. Thank you so much for being open. We're going to wrap up with our theme song, and let's go ahead and ask our praise team to come on out as we close out. Please join us tomorrow evening for our speaker, Jaleesa of Merge. And remember, we're going to be starting at 7 p.m. tomorrow evening. Please be on time. Thank you, guys.
Please stand with us. Are you hurting?
Are you hurting and broken within? Overwhelmed by the weight of your sin? Jesus is calling. Have you come to the end of yourself? Do you thirst for a drink from the well? Jesus is calling. Oh, come to the altar. The Father's arms are open wide. Forgiveness was bought with the precious blood of Jesus Christ. Leave behind your regrets and mistakes. Come today, there's no reason to wait. Jesus is calling. Bring your sorrows and trade them for joy. From the ashes a new life was born. Jesus is calling. Oh, come to the altar. The Father's arms are open wide. Forgiveness was bought with the precious blood of Jesus Christ. Oh, come to the altar. The Father's arms are open wide. Forgiveness was brought with the precious blood of Jesus Christ.
Oh, what a Savior.
Oh, what a Savior. Isn't He wonderful? Sing hallelujah. Christ is risen. Bow down before Him. For He is Lord of all. Sing hallelujah. Christ is risen. Sing, oh, what a Savior. Oh, what a Savior. Isn't He wonderful? Sing hallelujah. Christ is risen. Bow down before Him. For He is Lord of all. Sing hallelujah. Christ is risen. Sing, oh, come to the altar. The Father's arms are open wide. Forgiveness was brought with the precious blood of Jesus. Oh, come to the altar. The Father's arms are open wide. Forgiveness was brought with the precious blood of Jesus Christ.
Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you tonight and we know that your arms are open and you are calling on each one of us to come to you, Lord. But tonight, we want to bring to you all the youth of this church, those that are here, those that are not. You know each one of them, where they are in life, where they are in their knowledge of you, their experience of you, Lord, where they are in their individual life and in their family, their relationship with their parents or with grown-ups in general. We bring them to you, Lord. And as a loving Father, we ask that you embrace them, that you take them in your arms, that you bless them, that you touch them, Lord, in such a special way that they can feel your presence and be attracted to develop that special relationship with you. Because with you, Lord, all the issues that have been debated tonight can have a whole different sense, because you're a God of love, you're a God of understanding, and you know best how to touch the heart of your children. Again, Lord, I'm praying for all the youth of this church. Please, we implore you tonight, touch their heart, touch their mind, touch their spirit, touch their soul, touch their life, and beyond those youth, touch each parent and grown-up life as well, so we can be in our way some type of image of you, Lord, in front of those young eyes. Bless each one of us tonight. Bless our night and take us back home safely. And may we be back tomorrow night to continue that great experience of this week. This is my prayer in Jesus' name. Amen.
Hi, thank you for watching our live stream today. We hope that you were blessed and enjoyed today's service.
Until we stream live again, I'd like to encourage you to visit PlantationSDA.tv for more uplifting content. If you have a prayer request, please drop by PlantationSDA.org and let us know how we can pray for you.
And if you're in the Plantation, Florida area, please stop by and say hello.
See you soon.